Hi there everyone and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sarah Newman and I'm excited to bring you the 29th episode of Mixed Media The Paper Wishes Way. Today we're going to play with an assortment of new dies and clear acrylic stamps. And these are all from Creative Expressions designer Sam Poole, and she has a great way with all things shabby chic, which of course means that I instantly fell in love with her designs. So we're going to look at how to use these with some simple ink painting and gold foiling mixed media techniques. I'm really glad that you're joining us today, so come play with us. Let's take a look at today's supplies. We have 4 new die collections, 3 of which you can see here. And the first is our Tattered Tags, which has 5 tags, all with a really nice decal edge. So you can see the largest here is about 6 1/4 by 3 1/4 inches, and then ranging on down to our little baby tag here, which is about 1 3/4 inches by 1. Now you also get dies for the tag reinforcers. You've got 2 large and 2 small, and one of each of the sizes will have that deckled edge. So you've got a really nice classic tag design, but with Sam's shabby chic kind of torn edge twist on here. And of course these all are coming together. Now the other 2 dies that I want to show you are the background dies. So we have the dappled ovals and the rustic honeycomb, and these are great for layering, whether you use them in their entirety or snip them apart. Of course you can do that as well, and you can see that they're just the perfect size for the background on a card. Now another die set that I want to show you is the cheesecloth. Now this is similar to the honeycomb and ovals dies, but it's got this really cool kind of faux fabric effect. I don't have it for real because we had a little shipping situation between Creative Expressions in England and me here in Germany, and unfortunately this die didn't make it. So it is at Paper Wishes and it's part of Sam's collection, so I wanted to make sure to show it to you here. It's definitely on my wish list. I can think of a million things to use this for. Just looks like a lot of fun. Now one thing I will also add is that I really recommend the sticky specs for adhering these types of dies in particular onto your paper. Intricate dies can be really fiddly with a glue stick or liquid glue, especially on these very delicate edges and the sides and the corners here. So the micro dots really make it much easier and a lot less messy. And they come on A4 size sheets, which is like about an 8.5 by 11 size. And what I'll do is keep my sheets to one side, but I'll just trim off a little strip or a little snippet. And this is what I always have out and ready to go. All you do is just pull back the liner, press your die on here, and then lift it off. And it will take off those micro dots. And it just makes die cut adhesion a whole lot easier. Okay, now for the stamps. So this is Sam's Butterfly Walk collection of clear stamps. You have 14 designs on here, all with this beautiful vintage garden theme. So you can see the package here. I'm going to flip this over and you can see the stamps themselves, at least on the liner sheet. So you've got gorgeous designs. You've got 2 elements here which really do make for perfect card focals, and then you've got lots of smaller accent images and elements that you can use as part of a background too. So there's a lot that you can do with these. Now I'll show you a quick card before we get into the demos. Here's one way to use the stamp set in combination with both the dappled ovals and the tags dies. And in this case, we're going to be working with some of our Prism die ink pads. I'll do a little bit of simple painting in with this. It's a really easy technique to do and works beautifully with this shabby chic style. This butterfly was colored with one of my favorite mixed media stamping techniques, which is painting in with die ink pads. This is such an easy process to do, and it's a great way to personalize your stamping and your coloring with the background papers that you use on your card. Oh, and I should also say, all the cards that I'm showing you today are using papers from the Abundant Florals paper pack from Hot Off the Press, which is a botanical vintage looking set, and it just goes so nicely with the whole Sam Poole collection. So I've stamped the butterfly image onto white cardstock using jet black StazOn. It's important to use a permanent black ink for this step, not a dye ink pad, because you don't want the image to smear when you paint it in with the watery ink. And do make sure that ink is dry. So I've got a stamped butterfly here on my white cardstock. I've stamped this with the StazOn and it's dry. It doesn't take very long at all, and it is ready to color. But just take a look at how gorgeous that design is. It would look beautiful if I just left it as is, but I want to add a little bit of color. So I'm using my craft mat as my palette, and I'm going to use some of the Prism dye inks from Hunky Dory. So I have the Spring Meadow for my green and Dusky Rose, when that's going to be the color of my butterfly. Okay, so I'm just going to press each of these inks right onto my craft mat. Leave a little bit of space between the two of them, and then I'm going to add a little bit of water right next to each one of them and grab my water brush. And all I'm going to do is just use my water brush like a paintbrush, pick up a little bit of that watery ink, and then simply paint in my stamped image. And again, I don't have to worry about the black ink smearing at all because I have used that StazOn. So that's why it's so important. A dye ink will smear if you use that to stamp your image. Now, of course, the more water I use with my dusky pink, then the lighter the color will be. So you can decide if you want to have a really bright color or if you want something pale and soft. You can, of course, also mix some of your colors too, but look how quick and easy that is. Now I'm just going to kind of wipe off my, my brush and come back and add a little bit more of the green in here. And so for the green, I wanted just to go next to, not completely over, but kind of creating a shadow effect on that botanical. I wanted this to stand out with that butterfly. And you can see I'm not being too precise about it. It's nice to have kind of a soft watercolor effect with this, so you don't have to worry about it being too perfect. And there we go. Now the last thing you can decide to do if you want to, again, pick up a little bit of that watery color. Really make this watery this time. And you can use your distress splatter brush, but you can also just do a really quick little tap of some of this watery dusky rose on here, and that's going to kind of fill in some of this background area in here too. And then all you need to do is just let this dry and you're ready to do some die cutting. So I'm going to just quickly mop this up from my craft sheet. I love how easy that cleanup is. And then I can take a look at the tattered tags and kind of play with the positioning here, where I want the tag to go. Maybe I want it going this way. Maybe I want a smaller tag. I can also play with this too. And then what I suggest you do be sure that you let this dry completely, maybe even zap it with a heat tool to speed that up. Place your die down, secure it with some of that Hunky Dory stencil tape. That's a really good option. And then run it through your die cutting machine and you are ready to put it onto your card. So you can see here with my card, I'll bring this back in. We can take another look. I've layered this right on top of my Abundant Florals background, and I've got a little bit of soft edging going around here. Now that was using one of the little blender brushes and some more of that Dusky Rose ink, just kind of going around those beautiful deckled edges. And I've layered this with the little tiny tag from the collection. This has also been stamped with a portion of one of the images from the set. Now I have some more stamping down here at the bottom, very subtle. This has been done with the Thundercloud ink, so you get a really nice soft look. And you'll see a portion of the Dappled Ovals die cut on here, and that's just been trimmed down and it's used as part of the background. Now on the card inside, I have the rest of that Dappled Ovals die, plus more of that beautiful pattern paper and a Dazzle message on here. And now my whole card has some shabby chic style gold foiling. I think you can notice it probably the best up here in the corner, but I've got it all over the background of my card. And this just adds a really nice metallic touch and kind of softens the overall look of the card too. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to incorporate foil with your shabby chic designs with our next two cards. So this card has another gorgeous stamped image on here, this beautiful botanical. Now this has been stamped with Thundercloud ink on pattern paper. And although it is such a nice large image, I decided not to use that as my focal, but more as kind of a middle ground image. On top of that, I have one of the tag die cuts, plus this little stamped label that I've used to hold my card message, which is a dazzle. You can see the little tag reinforcer here, and I just love how it adds a little bit of polish to the piece. Now my background is the honeycomb die, and when I move this, I think you can see a bit of the gold foiling on here. And this is a super easy technique to do, and it works nicely to add just a touch of shine. So let's take a look at how to do this. I'm going to set aside my card. Of course, I've got my honeycomb die. I've got my gold fab foil. Now, my gold foil has been used and used and used, and I use up every little scrap of it. So yours is going to look a lot nicer when it comes to you. Mine is very much used, as you can see. So let's scoot these aside. I've got my honeycomb die cut piece. I've got a little piece of scrap paper underneath here too. Oh, and I wanted to show you, after I die cut that, and this is just die cut from white cardstock, I had this really cool frame left over. Now this is again from the honeycomb, and I just thought, you know, if you could just layer this onto a piece of pattern paper, you have a really pretty frame ready to go. So of course you can use the main die, but don't forget you can also use some of the pieces that you would normally just put in the recycling as well. Okay, so back to our technique. Okay, I'm going to pop this up onto some scrap paper just to make cleanup a little bit easier for me. And I'm going to grab my glue stick. And this is all you need. You also need, of course, your foil. So I'll grab out this little piece here. As you can see, lots of little bald spots in there. That is totally fine. So what I'm going to do is just pull off the cap here and just gently apply the ink into some various areas of the honeycomb die. I'm not going over the whole thing. Then what I want to do is remove this piece and quickly pop my gold foil on top and really smooth that down. Make sure that the foil is adhering to all of that gluey area. You may even want to flip this over and press it down from behind. Now what I want to do is put this underneath something heavy. A stack of books will do the trick. You can also use the plates from your die cutting machine. Those are nice and heavy, so that works too. Leave that for about 10 minutes. That's what I usually like to do. Now I've got a piece that I already glued a little while ago, and the glue is dry, and now what I can do is just pull this off, and you can see that gorgeous foiling on here. So again, let me bring back some of this paper. You can see the contrast on here a little bit better. So it's not an all over shine, but it's really just highlighting some of those areas. It's such a fantastic technique and so very easy to do, which is a lot of fun too. Okay, so let me bring back in my original card, and you can see where I've used this on here. I've also got some glue stick edging on my stamped piece, and I've got a little bit of jute twine on here just to add some contrast. Now for the card inside, here's that butterfly we saw in the first card. This has been stamped with Thundercloud ink, again onto pattern paper. And I love how you can get such contrasting effects. So again, here's that first card, and here it is just stamped, the same image stamped in Thundercloud ink. I really love how you're able to get such very, very different looks from one beautiful stamp. Okay, now I do have another look you can get from that same butterfly image, this time using a different foiling technique. So let's take a look at that. Here's another version of that beautiful stamped butterfly image, and this time I think when I tilt this you can see that this image has a little bit of gold foiling on there in a gilding technique, and this is such an easy process to do with your stamps, so I wanted to take you through that step by step. So let me set aside my card, and I'm going to bring in my stamp positioner, my MISTI. And you can see on one side of this, I've got my stamped image. Again, this has been stamped with black StazOn. This is all held in place. I've got my stamp on the other side, and this is exactly lined up. So I've just cleaned off the ink from my stamp, and now I can add some glue to it. Now, I'm using the Cosmic Shimmer Specialist acrylic glue, and I've got a little piece of cut and dry foam on here too. So cut and dry, for those of you who are not familiar, this is from Ranger, and this is a really versatile and handy tool to have. It's a big foam sheet. It comes in an 8.5 by 11 size, and as you can see, you can just cut it apart and you can use it to apply paint or ink or glue, whatever you happen to need. So I've got a little bit of that white glue on here. I'm going to pick this up with my cut and dry, and I'm going to apply it to some areas of my stamp. Now, it's just where I want that gold foiling to go, so I'm not going to go all over. Mostly just concentrate on the butterfly, a little bit on that botanical piece there too, and then quickly move that aside and stamp this down. And again, I want to make sure that I've got some good contact on here. Lift this up, and then very quickly, I'm going to take this off, grab some of my gold foil. This can be some that you've repurposed from a previous project. You can see my my design on here from before, and then just press that on there. I make sure to clean off the glue from my stamp. It's a water-based glue, so it will come off quite easily. And then, as before, I need to put this underneath something heavy. Stack of books, my die cutting plates, and let that glue dry. And then, when it is dry, I can just gently pull back that foil, and you can see I've got a beautiful gilded butterfly. So of course, the more areas where I put that glue, the more foiling I will have. But I love having it just in little pieces, little areas of that beautiful butterfly, just for a little touch of shine. And it's a great way to enhance these pretty images. Okay, so I'm going to bring back in my card. We'll take another look at this. So for the background on here, I've stamped a lot of the smaller accent images right onto the pattern paper. Again, using that Thundercloud ink, it just comes in so handy for techniques like this. And then I just pop the stamped focal right on top. I've got some gold foiling going around the edges, and I just use my glue stick to do that. And a simple gold bow on here. Really quick and easy process to do. Now for the card inside, I've got a couple more of those stamped butterflies, a few little more heart-shaped dazzles, and then my dazzle greeting on here too. So these are just a few of the techniques that you can do with this fabulous assortment from Sam Poole and Creative Expressions. Thank you so much for joining me today and for being a part of the Paper Wishes family. We're really glad that you're here with us. Do be sure to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com.